Have you ever wondered what goes on inside a narcissist's mind when they realize you simply walked away? No drama, no yelling, no social media posts, just silence. They expected you to beg, cry, crawl for attention, just like all the other times. But this time, you did the unthinkable. You let them go too. And it's in that silence, in that lack of noise, that something inside them shatters. According to Freud, the narcissist lives in a fantasy world where they believe they are the center of everything. When they realize you're no longer orbiting around them, when they see your validation is no longer needed for you to feel alive, they collapse. Because it was never about love. It was always about control. Stay with me until the end, because today I'll show you why silence is the most powerful weapon against a narcissist, and how psychoanalysis explains this shift that gives you your power back. In a relationship with a narcissist, you lose something precious, your sense of self. You start to doubt your own perception, your emotions, your boundaries. Everything gets twisted. Everything is manipulated to make you feel like you're not enough, and them, like they're everything. Freud explained this as a disconnection from the reality principle. You begin to live in someone else's world, and your own desires become invisible. Meanwhile, the narcissist projects their insecurities onto you, and without realizing it, you start carrying guilt that was never yours to begin with. But the turning point comes the moment you stop seeing yourself through their eyes and begin to see yourself as whole, flawed, yes, scarred, but still worthy. Freud called this the return of the ego, when we stop being someone else's emotional extension and become the authors of our own lives again. This process takes pain, courage, and time. It requires looking in the mirror and admitting, I lost myself trying to love someone who never knew what love was. But that awareness is freedom. The narcissist never expects you to rise without them because they taught you to depend emotionally on their presence. But now, you're rising. No revenge, no need to prove anything, just rebuilding. Every small choice you make for yourself, changing friendships, rediscovering a hobby, starting therapy, is a silent scream of freedom. And this, Freud explained, is how trauma transforms into psychic growth. The narcissist expected you to beg. You bloomed. One of the biggest traps with narcissists is the toxic cycle: idealization, abandonment, seduction, return, and rejection. Freud called it the repetition, compulsion, and unconscious drive to relive old wounds. If you grew up trying to earn love, you may have fallen into this pattern without even knowing it. But then a moment comes when pain turns into clarity. You see the cycle from a distance. You stop taking the bait. And for the narcissist, that's catastrophic. When you choose silence, everything changes. He texts you, and you don't respond. He provokes you, and you stay calm. He creates drama, and you don't play along. That silence, Freud said, is sublimation, the transformation of pain into awareness. The narcissist expected confrontation, tears, fights, but you answered with ... absence. And that absence is his worst nightmare. You locked the door and threw the key into the sea. Not out of pride, but as a declaration. I don't play this game anymore. Freud explained that ego maturity happens when we stop reacting like wounded children and start protecting our own boundaries. You're no longer waiting for texts. You're not living to prove you're okay. You're not hoping he sees what he lost. You're simply living for yourself. And that destroys his fantasy of being irreplaceable. Freud said, a healthy ego doesn't need an audience. You don't need to post cryptic messages. You don't need fake smiles for social media. You don't need to prove your happiness. You simply are happy. And that peace, that ease, is everything the narcissist will never have. True happiness is the deepest narcissistic wound, because it silently proves he never had the control he thought he did. Freud called it the narcissistic injury, the moment when reality crushes the illusion of superiority. He thought he was essential to your happiness. But now, watching you at peace, he realizes he was just a chapter, not the whole book. And that truth, that's what he can't stand. You didn't scream. You didn't expose him. You didn't fight. You simply walked away, with strength, with dignity, with self-love. And that quiet exit was more powerful than any confrontation. You didn't leave as a victim or a villain. You left as the protagonist of your own story. And to someone who survives by manipulating the narrative, that's unacceptable. True healing happens when you stop waiting for an apology and choose to be your own rescue. If this video spoke to you, like it now, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel for more reflections like this one.